Lieutenant Yuna stood at the viewing window of the diplomatic vessel Starlight Harmony. She watched the stars move slowly past the thick glass. Behind her, the ship hummed quietly as it traveled through deep space. She had been a soldier for 8 years. She had fought in 3 different battles. She had survived things that would make most people cry. But today she felt nervous. The reason for her fear was not an enemy ship. It was not a dangerous mission. It was 12 small, furry alien children. The Valori were a peaceful species. They had 4 arms, soft golden fur, and large round eyes that made them look like teddy bears from Earth. Their homeworld was cold, so they had thick fur to keep warm. The adults were calm and wise. They spoke softly and moved gracefully. The children, however, were a different story. Yuna turned around when she heard the door open. Captain Jiyeon walked in. She was a tall woman with short black hair and a face that rarely smiled. But today, even she looked worried. "The Valori delegation has arrived," Captain Jiyeon said. "The parents will be in meetings for the next 3 weeks. The children will stay in the recreation wing." "And I am supposed to watch them?" Yuna asked. "You are the best choice. You have patience. You have discipline. And most importantly, you volunteered for cultural exchange duties." Yuna remembered that decision. She had thought cultural exchange meant sharing food recipes and learning about alien music. She did not think it meant babysitting. "How bad can it be?" she asked herself quietly. She found out very quickly. The Valori cubs were brought to the recreation wing by their parents. Each parent had 4 arms, and they used all of them to hug their children goodbye. The cubs made small crying sounds. They did not want their parents to leave. But the peace negotiations were important. The Valori and the Kathrani had been fighting for 200 years. This meeting could finally end the war. Yuna counted the cubs. There were 12 of them. They ranged in age from what humans would call 5 years old to about 10 years old. Their fur colors were different shades of gold, orange, and cream. Their eyes were big and wet from crying. "Hello, little ones," Yuna said in the gentlest voice she could manage. "My name is Yuna. I will be taking care of you while your parents are busy." The cubs looked at her. They had never seen a human up close before. Humans were famous in the galaxy, but not for nice reasons. Humans were known as predators. They had forward-facing eyes, sharp teeth, and they came from a planet that was considered a death world. Other species were scared of humans. One small cub, braver than the others, walked toward Yuna. This cub had cream-colored fur and the biggest eyes Yuna had ever seen. The cub reached out with one of her 4 small hands and touched Yuna's leg. "You are warm," the cub said in a tiny voice. Yuna smiled. "Yes, I am. Humans are warm-blooded. What is your name?" "I am called Miri," the cub said. "That is a beautiful name, Miri." The other cubs slowly came closer. They were curious now. One cub touched Yuna's hand. Another cub sniffed her hair. A third cub poked her stomach. "Why do you only have 2 arms?" one cub asked. "That is how humans are made," Yuna said. "That is very sad," the cub said seriously. "How do you carry things?" Yuna laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. The cubs liked the sound. They had never heard a human laugh before. It was not scary at all. Ensign Taiho arrived to help Yuna. He was a young man with a round face and kind eyes. He worked in the ship's engineering department, but he had been assigned to help with the cubs because he had younger siblings back on Earth. "They are so cute," Taiho whispered to Yuna. "Do not let them hear you say that," Yuna whispered back. "They might be cute, but they are also very fast. I saw one climb the wall already." It was true. The Valori cubs could climb anything. Their 4 arms and strong grip meant that no surface was safe. Within the first hour, 3 cubs had climbed to the top of the bookshelf. 2 cubs had found their way into a ventilation shaft. One cub had somehow gotten inside a storage cabinet and fallen asleep there. Yuna and Taiho spent the entire first day just keeping track of the cubs. By evening, both humans were exhausted. The cubs, however, were still full of energy. "Bath time," Yuna announced. The cubs did not like bath time. They ran in 12 different directions. Taiho chased 3 cubs down the corridor. Yuna caught 2 cubs trying to hide under a table. It took 1 full hour to get all 12 cubs clean and dry. After the bath, Yuna realized she had a problem. The cubs were cold. The ship's temperature was comfortable for humans, but Valori cubs needed more warmth, especially after a bath. Their fur was still slightly damp, and they were shivering. "I have an idea," Taiho said. He ran to his quarters and came back with a box. Inside the box were soft, fluffy slippers. They were pink and had small rabbit ears on them. "My sister sent these to me," Taiho explained, looking embarrassed. "She thought I would get cold feet in space." Yuna looked at the slippers. She looked at the shivering cubs. Then she looked at her own feet. She was wearing standard military boots, but in her quarters she had something better. "Wait here," she said. Yuna returned with her own slippers. They were light blue and very soft. She also brought a pair that belonged to Ensign Bora, who worked in the medical bay. Bora's slippers were white and fluffy like clouds. The cubs stared at the slippers with wide eyes. "What are those?" Miri asked. "These are slippers," Yuna explained. "Humans wear them to keep our feet warm and comfortable." She put the blue slippers on her feet to demonstrate. The cubs watched carefully. Then Miri reached out with all 4 hands. "Can I try?" she asked. Yuna gave her the pink rabbit slippers. Miri put them on her 2 bottom feet. The slippers were too big for her, but she did not care. She took a step forward and immediately slipped on the smooth floor. She slid 3 feet before stopping. The other cubs gasped. Then they started to laugh. It was a beautiful sound, like tiny bells ringing. "Do that again," one cub shouted. Miri tried again. She slipped and slid across the floor, her arms waving in the air. She was laughing so hard that she fell over. The other cubs rushed forward, all wanting to try the magical sliding shoes. Yuna watched them play. She did not know it yet, but this small moment would change everything. These simple slippers, made of soft fabric and meant only for comfort, were about to become the most famous human invention in the entire galaxy. But that night, Yuna only saw happy cubs sliding on the floor, their laughter filling the room. And for the first time since the mission began, she smiled and thought that maybe this assignment would not be so bad after all. She was wrong, of course. Things were about to get much more interesting. The morning started quietly. Yuna woke up early and went to check on the cubs. They were all sleeping in a big pile, their furry bodies tangled together for warmth. It was the cutest thing she had ever seen. She took a picture with her communication device and sent it to her mother back on Earth. But peace never lasts long when children are involved. By breakfast time, the cubs had discovered something important. The floors in the Starlight Harmony were very, very smooth. Human ships were designed for easy cleaning. The floors were polished metal, covered with a special coating that made them shine. Dirt and dust could not stick to these floors. Robots cleaned them every night. What the engineers did not consider was that soft slippers on smooth floors created the perfect conditions for sliding. Ensign Taiho was the first to notice the problem. He was walking down Corridor 7, carrying a tray of breakfast foods, when he heard a strange sound. It was a mix of laughter and screaming, getting louder very fast. He turned around just in time to see 12 furry cubs sliding toward him at high speed. "Move! Move! Move!" the cubs shouted, waving all 4 of their arms. Taiho jumped to the side. The tray flew out of his hands. Food went everywhere. The cubs zoomed past him like furry bullets, still laughing. "What just happened?" Taiho asked himself. He followed the trail of giggling sounds and found the cubs at the end of the corridor. They had crashed into a pile of cushions that someone had placed there. probably Yuna, who was standing nearby with a tired look on her face. They discovered the long corridors, Yuna explained. I can see that. They have been doing this since sunrise. Taiho looked at the cubs. Each one was wearing slippers on all 4 feet. The slippers were different colors and sizes. Some were clearly meant for humans. Others looked like they had been made from towels and cloth strips. Where did they get all those slippers? Taiho asked. They went room to room this morning. They asked everyone for slippers. Apparently, when a small furry cub with big eyes asks you for your slippers, you cannot say no. This was true. The Valori cubs had learned very quickly that most species found them adorable. They used this power without mercy. By mid-morning, they had collected 37 pairs of slippers from various crew members. The sliding only got worse. Corridor 7 was the longest corridor on the ship. It stretched from the front of the ship to the back, over 200 meters of smooth, polished floor. The cubs discovered that if they pushed off from the wall at the top, they could slide almost the entire length. Lieutenant Yuna tried to stop them at first. She really did. But every time she caught one cub, 3 more would zoom past her. It was like trying to catch water with her hands. Maybe we should just let them play, Taiho suggested. And if they get hurt? They have not gotten hurt yet, and they are having so much fun. Yuna watched the cubs. They were taking turns now. Some cubs would sit on the floor and spin as they slid. Others would hold hands and slide in pairs. One clever cub had discovered that lying on her stomach made her go faster. The laughter filled the corridor. It was such a happy sound that Yuna found it hard to be angry. Fine, she said, but we need rules. She gathered all the cubs together and explained the rules. No sliding during meal times, no sliding in the restricted areas, no sliding near the engine room, and most importantly, there must always be cushions at the end of every sliding path. The cubs agreed to everything. They were so happy to have permission that they hugged Yuna with all their arms. She was covered in 12 furry bodies, each one thanking her in their tiny voices. Word spread quickly through the ship. Other crew members came to watch the cubs slide. Some of them laughed. Others took pictures. A few brave souls even asked if they could try. Ensign Bora from the medical bay was the first human to join the sliding. She borrowed back her white fluffy slippers and stood at the top of Corridor 7. The cubs cheered for her. "You can do it!" Miri shouted. Bora pushed off from the wall. She slid down the corridor, her arms stretched out for balance. She was not as fast as the cubs, but she made it all the way to the cushion pile. The cubs jumped on her immediately, celebrating her success. "That was amazing," Bora said, laughing. Soon, more humans joined, engineers, doctors, pilots, and even some of the kitchen staff. They all wanted to try the sliding. The cubs were excellent teachers. They showed the humans how to position their feet, how to push off for maximum speed, and how to spin without falling over. By afternoon, Corridor 7 had become the most popular place on the ship. Someone had even set up a timing system. They were holding races. Captain Gion heard about the commotion and came to investigate. She stood at the entrance of Corridor 7 with her arms crossed. Her face showed no emotion. Everyone stopped. The humans stood at attention. The cubs hid behind Yuna's legs. "What is happening here?" Captain Gion asked. Yuna stepped forward. "Captain, the Valori cubs discovered that slippers allow them to slide on our floors. They have been playing safely, and I have established rules to prevent any accidents." Captain Gion looked at the corridor. She looked at the cushion pile. She looked at the cubs peeking out from behind Yuna. "I see," she said. There was a long moment of silence. Nobody breathed. Then Captain Gion did something nobody expected. She took off her boots. Underneath, she was wearing thick gray socks. "These will have to do," she said. She walked to the top of the corridor. Everyone stared with open mouths. Captain Gion, the most serious person on the ship, was about to slide. She pushed off from the wall. Her socks were not as smooth as slippers, so she moved slowly at first. But she kept her balance perfectly. She slid all the way down the corridor with her back straight and her head high, like a queen on a throne. When she reached the cushion pile, she stepped off gracefully. She turned to face her crew. "That was satisfactory," she said. "Continue your activities. But I want a full safety report by tomorrow morning." Then she put her boots back on and walked away. The corridor was silent for 3 seconds. Then everyone cheered. The cubs rushed to Captain Ji-yeon and hugged her legs before she could escape. For just a moment, the serious captain smiled. That evening, the ship's communication system buzzed with messages. Other species on the ship had heard about the sliding. The Valori parents, taking a break from their negotiations, asked to see videos. The Kathrani diplomats, despite being the traditional enemies of the Valori, admitted that the videos were not unpleasant to watch. Yuna sat in the recreation wing, surrounded by tired cubs. They had slid all day and were finally ready for sleep. Miri curled up in Yuna's lap, still wearing her pink rabbit slippers. "Yuna," Miri said sleepily, "why do humans make everything so smooth?" Yuna thought about it. "We like things to be clean and easy to take care of. But it makes everything so fun to slide on." "I suppose it does." Miri yawned, showing her small teeth. "Humans are very smart. You made the whole ship into a playground and you did not even know it." Yuna laughed softly. She had never thought about it that way. Humans built things for practical reasons. They did not think about fun. But maybe that was what made it special. The fun was an accident, and accidental fun was often the best kind. She looked around the room at the sleeping cubs, their slippers still on their feet, their faces peaceful and happy. Tomorrow would bring more sliding, more laughter, and probably more chaos. Yuna could not wait. The complaints started arriving on day 5. Captain Ji-yeon sat in her office, staring at her communication screen. There were 17 new messages, all marked urgent. She opened the first one. "Captain, this is Trade Representative Vornik of the Delthian delegation. I must report that a small furry object collided with my legs at high speed in Corridor 12. I nearly spilled my ceremonial tea. Please address this matter." She opened the second message. "Captain Ji-yeon, I am writing to inform you that my meditation was interrupted by the sound of screaming. Upon investigation, I discovered it was not screaming of distress, but screaming of joy. While I am relieved that no one was harmed, I request that joy be expressed more quietly in the future. Signed, Monk Torello of the Silent Order." The third message made her close her eyes and take a deep breath. "To the human captain, we, the Kathrani delegation, have observed the Valori young ones engaging in rapid horizontal movement throughout your vessel. We do not understand this activity. It appears chaotic and undignified. However, we must admit that we watched the recordings for 3 hours. We do not know why. Please explain. Ambassador Krell." Ji-yeon called Yuna to her office. Yuna arrived looking tired. She had not slept much in the past few days. Keeping track of 12 sliding cubs was exhausting work. "Sit down," Ji-yeon said. "We have a situation." She showed Yuna the messages. Yuna read them with growing worry on her face. "I am sorry, Captain. I tried to contain the sliding to Corridor 7, but the cubs discovered that other corridors work too. They have been exploring." Exploring is one word for it. Ambassador Vornik described them as furry projectiles. "They are very fast," Yuna admitted. Ji-yeon leaned back in her chair. This was a delicate matter. The peace negotiations between the Valori and Kathrani were at a critical stage. Any incident could destroy months of careful diplomacy. But she also could not simply lock up 12 children who were just playing. "What do you suggest?" she asked Yuna. Yuna thought carefully. "We could create designated sliding zones, certain corridors at certain times. That way, other species will know to avoid those areas during sliding hours." "That might work. But we have another problem. Ji-yun pulled up a new message on her screen. This one was from the Valori ambassador herself. My dear Captain Ji-yun, the message read, I have seen the videos of my cubs enjoying your human slippers. I have never seen them so happy. They have been under great stress because of the war. This journey has been difficult for them, but your people have given them joy. I am deeply grateful. I have one request. When these negotiations are complete, I would like to bring slippers back to our home world. Can you provide us with the design specifications? Also, I would like to order 1,000 pairs for the children's hospital in our capital city. Thank you for everything. Ambassador Suri. Yuna read the message twice. She wants to buy slippers? She wants to buy a lot of slippers. This was unexpected. The peace negotiations were about borders, resources, and ending centuries of conflict. Nobody had planned for a slipper trade deal. Should I contact the supply department? Yuna asked. Do that, and schedule a meeting with Ambassador Suri. If the Valori want slippers, we should discuss this properly. The meeting happened the next day. Ambassador Suri was a tall Valori with silver fur and wise eyes. She had been a diplomat for 40 years and had seen many strange things, but she had never expected to discuss footwear in a peace negotiation. Lieutenant Yuna, she said, please tell me about these slippers. Yuna had prepared a presentation. She explained the history of slippers on Earth. She talked about different materials, different designs, and different uses. She showed pictures of slippers from around the world. The ambassador listened carefully to everything. So these items are common on your planet? She asked. Very common. Most humans own at least one pair. And they are used for comfort and warmth? Yes. We wear them at home, usually indoors. Ambassador Suri nodded slowly. On Valori, we do not have anything like this. Our floors are rough stone or woven fiber. There is no sliding. There is no playing with foot coverings. She paused and looked at Yuna with her large golden eyes. Do you know what the Valori children are taught from birth? They are taught about the war. They learn the names of battles. They memorize the dates of attacks. By the time they are 5 years old, they know more about death than most human adults. Yuna felt her heart grow heavy. But here, on your ship, they have learned something new. They have learned that floors can be smooth. They have learned that sliding is fun. They have learned that a simple piece of soft fabric can bring happiness. The ambassador's voice became very soft. Lieutenant Yuna, you have given my cubs their childhood back. I cannot repay this debt. Yuna did not know what to say. She had not done anything special. She had just given some children some slippers to keep their feet warm, but maybe that was the point. Sometimes the simplest things made the biggest difference. The news about the slippers spread beyond the Starlight Harmony. Other ships in the fleet heard about it, then other species heard about it. Within a week, the story had reached 3 different star systems. The reactions were mixed. Some species thought it was ridiculous. The Thren, a serious warrior species, called it undignified nonsense. The Mechanical Collective, a group of robot beings, calculated that sliding was inefficient movement and did not understand the appeal. But many species were curious. The Ailori, who had feathers instead of fur, wanted to know if slippers would work for them. The Grundar, large rock-like beings, wondered if they could make slippers strong enough for their heavy bodies. The Mekari, a species of small mouse-like creatures, were already designing tiny slippers for their children. Captain Ji-yeon received a message from Fleet Command. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Captain Ji-yeon, we have received numerous inquiries about the slipper phenomenon on your vessel. The diplomatic corps believes this could be an opportunity for cultural exchange. Please document all slipper-related activities and prepare a report for the Interspecies Relations Committee. Also, the Admiral's grandchildren would like some of those pink rabbit slippers. Please send 3 pairs in sizes small, medium, and large. Signed, Fleet Admiral Park. Jian put down her communication device and laughed. She actually laughed out loud, alone in her office. She had commanded ships in battle. She had negotiated with hostile aliens. She had survived situations that should have killed her. And now she was in charge of a slipper distribution operation. She called Yuna and Taeho to her office. "New orders," she said. "We are now officially responsible for introducing slippers to the galaxy." Taeho's eyes went wide. "Seriously?" "Very seriously. Fleet Command sees this as a diplomatic opportunity. Soft footwear might succeed where weapons and threats have failed." Yuna thought about Miri and the other cubs. She thought about their laughter echoing through the corridors. She thought about Ambassador Suri's words about giving children their childhood back. "What do we need to do?" she asked. "First, we document everything. How slippers are made, what materials work best, how to slide safely. Then we share this information with any species that wants it." "And the cubs?" Yuna asked. Jian smiled, a rare and beautiful thing. "The cubs," she said, "are now official consultants for the Human Slipper Initiative. Their expertise in the field of sliding is unmatched." Yuna returned to the recreation wing to tell the cubs the news. They did not fully understand what official consultants meant, but they understood that they were important now. They were helping to spread the joy of sliding to other planets and other children. Miri hugged Yuna tightly with all 4 arms. "Does this mean we can slide forever?" she asked. Yuna hugged her back. "Yes, little one, you can slide forever." Engineer Do-hoon stared at the requisition order on his screen. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. He read it again. "This cannot be right," he said to himself. The order was clear. 10,000 pairs of soft slippers. Delivery needed within 2 weeks. Various sizes required for different species. Materials must be safe for all known skin and fur types. Colors, optional, but cheerful colors preferred. Do-hoon had been an engineer for 15 years. He had built engines. He had repaired hull breaches. He had once kept a dying ship flying with nothing but wire and hope, but he had never manufactured slippers. He called his team together for an emergency meeting. "We have a new assignment," he announced. "We are making slippers." His team of 12 engineers looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Slippers?" Senior Engineer Minji asked. "Like foot clothes?" "Exactly like foot clothes. 10,000 pairs." "Why?" Do-hoon explained the situation. He told them about the Valori cubs, the sliding, and the diplomatic situation. He showed them the message from Fleet Command. By the time he finished, his team was no longer confused. They were excited. "This is the most important project we have ever worked on," said Junior Engineer Hana, only half joking. "Let us not exaggerate," Do-hoon said. "But yes, this is important. If we succeed, we could help bring peace to species that have been fighting for centuries. All because of slippers." The team got to work immediately. The first problem was materials. Regular Earth slippers were made from cotton, wool, or synthetic fibers. These materials worked fine for humans. But what about the Valori, whose feet were different shapes? What about the Grundar, whose rocky skin would tear through normal fabric? What about the Makari, who were allergic to most synthetic materials? Minji took charge of material research. She contacted suppliers from 17 different planets. She ordered samples of every soft material she could find. Her workspace soon looked like a fabric store had exploded. "I found something interesting," she announced one day. "There is a plant on the planet Varan 3 that produces fibers softer than anything on Earth. It is called cloudweed. The locals use it to make blankets for their newborns." She held up a piece of the fabric. It was white and fluffy, lighter than air. Do-hoon touched it carefully. It felt like touching a cloud. "This is perfect," he said. "Order as much as we can get." The second problem was size. Humans had 2 feet of roughly similar shapes, but other species were different. The Valori had 4 feet. The Aelori had 3. The Grundar had 2 feet, but each foot was the size of a human child. The Mikari had 6 tiny feet that moved very quickly. Junior engineer Junho took charge of design. He created a system where each slipper could be adjusted to fit different foot shapes. The slippers had flexible sides that could expand or contract. They had straps that could be loosened or tightened. They came in 20 different sizes, from microscopic to massive. "I call it the universal slipper design," Junho said proudly. "One design, infinite possibilities." The third problem was production. Making 10,000 slippers by hand would take years. They needed machines. But the Starlight Harmony was a diplomatic vessel, not a factory. They did not have manufacturing equipment. This is where Do-hoon showed his genius. He modified the ship's 3D printing systems. These machines were normally used to create replacement parts for repairs, but with some adjustments, they could create slipper components. He also reprogrammed the cargo robots to assemble the slippers once the components were printed. Within 3 days, they had a fully automated slipper production line. The first batch of 100 slippers was ready for testing. Do-hoon personally delivered them to the Valori cubs. "New slippers!" Miri shouted when she saw the box. "More slippers!" The cubs rushed forward, their 4 arms grabbing at the box. Yuna had to calm them down before they tore it apart. "One at a time," she said. "Let Engineer Do-hoon explain." Do-hoon knelt down to be at eye level with the cubs. He showed them the new slippers. They were made of cloudweed fabric, soft and white and perfect for sliding. "These are special slippers," he explained. "We made them just for you. They will fit your feet perfectly. And they are extra slippery on the bottom." Miri's eyes grew huge. "Extra slippery?" "Extra slippery." The cubs put on their new slippers and rushed to Corridor 7. The results were spectacular. They slid faster than ever before. They went so fast that Taiho had to add extra cushions at the end of the corridor. "It works!" Junho shouted, watching the cubs zoom past. "Our design works!" The engineering team celebrated that night. They had done something no human engineers had ever done before. They had created the galaxy's first universal slipper design. It was not as exciting as building a new engine or discovering a new fuel source, but in its own way, it was just as important. News of the slipper production spread quickly. Orders started coming in from other ships, other planets, other species. The Valori government ordered 50,000 pairs for their children's hospitals. The Iolori requested 20,000 pairs, modified for their 3-footed bodies. Even the Sirius Thren warriors quietly ordered 500 pairs, claiming they needed them for tactical foot protection research. Do-hoon's team worked around the clock. They improved their designs. They found new materials. They created slippers that could glow in the dark for species who lived in darkness. They made waterproof slippers for species who lived in wet environments. They designed heated slippers for species from cold worlds and cooled slippers for species from hot worlds. One day, Do-hoon received a personal message. It was from the Kethrani ambassador, the same species that had been at war with the Valori for 200 years. "Engineer Do-hoon," the message read, "we have observed the positive effects of your slipper technology on the Valori young ones. We must admit that we were skeptical at first. But we have conducted our own research and determined that sliding could benefit Kethrani children as well. We request that you design slippers suitable for Kethrani feet. Our children have claws that must be accommodated. We await your response. Ambassador Krell." Do-hoon read the message several times. The Kethrani were asking for slippers. The same Kethrani who had been enemies of the Valori for centuries. The same Kethrani who were known for their fierce pride and refusal to accept help from anyone. And they were asking for slippers for their children. He called his team together. "We have a new order," he said. "The Kethrani want slippers." There was silence. Then Minji started to laugh. Then Junho joined her. Soon the entire team was laughing. We are ending a 200-year war, Hana said between laughs. With slippers. Not ending it, Dohun corrected. Just helping it along. But secretly, he hoped she was right. The Kathrani slippers were the most challenging design yet. Kathrani feet had sharp claws that could cut through most materials. They also had scales that needed to breathe. Regular slippers would not work. The team spent 5 days on the problem. They tried dozens of different approaches. Finally, Minji found the solution. She created a slipper with a flexible, scale-like outer layer that moved with the Kathrani foot. The inside was lined with cloudweed for comfort. The bottom had special pads that protected the claws while still allowing sliding. They sent a sample pair to the Kathrani ship. The response came back within an hour. Acceptable. Order 10,000 pairs. Make them in red. Red is a noble color for Kathrani. Also, our children wish to challenge the Valori children to a sliding competition. Please arrange this. Dohun smiled as he read the message. A sliding competition between children who were supposed to be enemies. It was absurd. It was wonderful. He forwarded the message to Captain Jiyon with a simple note. I think we might actually be making peace here, all because of slippers. Captain Jiyon's response was equally simple. Keep making slippers, engineer. Keep making slippers. 10 years later, Lieutenant Yuna stood in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council. She was no longer a lieutenant. She was now Admiral Yuna, commander of the diplomatic fleet. Her hair had some gray in it now, and her face had more lines. But her eyes were still warm, and her smile was still kind. Around her, thousands of beings from hundreds of species had gathered. They were here for the 10th Annual Galactic Sliding Championship. What had started as cubs playing in a corridor had become the biggest event in the galaxy. Yuna looked at the enormous sliding track that had been built for the occasion. It was 5 kilometers long, made of the smoothest material ever created. It twisted and turned through the Grand Hall, with loops and curves and jumps. At the end was the largest cushion pile in history, made from cloudweed harvested from 12 different planets. The competitors were warming up. There were Valori teams, their golden fur gleaming under the lights. There were Kathrani teams, their red slippers flashing as they practiced their moves. There were Aelori teams, Grundar teams, Mikari teams, and dozens more. There was even a human team, led by a young woman who reminded Yuna of herself 20 years ago. Admiral Yuna. She turned to see a familiar face. It was Miri. The little cub with cream-colored fur had grown into a beautiful young Valori woman. She was taller than Yuna now, and she carried herself with confidence and grace. Miri, Yuna said, opening her arms. Look at you. They hugged. Some things never changed. Miri still gave the best hugs in the galaxy. I never properly thanked you, Miri said, for everything you did back then. I did not do anything special. I just gave you some slippers. Miri shook her head. You gave us much more than that. You gave us joy. You gave us hope. You showed us that the galaxy was not just a place of war and fear. It was also a place where you could slide down corridors and laugh. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away. Are you competing today? She asked. Miri grinned, showing her teeth. I am the captain of the Valori national team. We have won the championship for the past 3 years. We intend to win again. The Kathrani team looks strong this year. They are, but we are stronger. Miri winked. Besides, I learned from the best. Remember when you used to race us in Corridor 7? Yuna laughed. I remember losing every single time. You were slow, but you had excellent form. They talked for a while about the old days. Yuna learned that most of the original 12 cubs had grown up to do amazing things. One had become a doctor, another had become a diplomat, like her mother. 3 had become professional sliding athletes. too had become engineers, inspired by Do-hoon and his team, and Miri had become an ambassador for interspecies cooperation. The championship ceremony began. Thousands of beings took their seats. The noise was incredible, a mix of cheers and calls and sounds that human ears could barely process. Admiral Park, now very old but still sharp, gave the opening speech. He talked about how a simple invention had changed the galaxy. He talked about how children from enemy species now played together. He talked about how the slipper industry had become one of the largest in the galaxy, employing millions of beings on hundreds of planets. But most importantly, Admiral Park said, we learned something about ourselves. We humans always thought our greatest gift to the galaxy would be our technology, our weapons, our fierce survival skills. We were wrong. Our greatest gift was something much simpler. It was our ability to find joy in small things. It was our instinct to play. The crowd cheered. Then the races began. Yuna watched from the VIP section. Next to her sat Captain Ji-yeon, now retired but still looking elegant. Next to Ji-yeon sat Tai-ho, who had married Bora and had 3 children of his own. Engineer Do-hoon was there too, his hair completely white now, but his eyes still bright with the joy of creation. Did you ever imagine this? Tai-ho asked, watching a team of Grundar slide past with surprising speed. Never, Yuna admitted. I thought I would spend my career fighting battles. Instead, I spent it organizing sliding events. Is that a complaint? Absolutely not. The Valori team performed brilliantly. Miri led them through the course with incredible skill, sliding and spinning and jumping. The crowd went wild. When they crossed the finish line, they had set a new speed record. The Kathrani team was equally impressive. Their red slippers were a blur as they raced through the course. They came within half a second of the Valori record. In the end, the Valori won by a tiny margin. Miri accepted the trophy with grace, then immediately invited the Kathrani team captain to share the stage with her. This trophy belongs to everyone who slides, Miri announced. We are not enemies on the sliding track. We are not enemies anywhere. We are all children who discovered that floors can be smooth and slippers can be soft and life can be full of joy. The Kathrani captain, a large being with dark scales and sharp claws, nodded in agreement. Then, to everyone's surprise, she pulled out 2 pairs of slippers. One was gold, the traditional Valori color. One was red, the traditional Kathrani color. 50 years ago, our people were at war, the Kathrani captain said. Our parents taught us to hate each other. But then some human cubs showed us a different way. They showed us that sliding is better than fighting. They showed us that laughter is better than crying. They showed us that soft slippers are better than hard weapons. She handed the gold slippers to Miri. Miri handed the red slippers back to her. They put on each other's slippers, standing together on the stage. Today we slide as friends, Miri said. Today we slide as family, the Kathrani captain added. The crowd erupted in cheers. Beings who had been enemies for centuries were hugging each other. Children were laughing and sliding down the aisles. Somewhere in the chaos, a group of young humans started a conga line of sliding, which quickly grew to include every species present. Yuna watched it all with tears streaming down her face. She did not try to hide them. Tai-ho put his arm around her shoulders. You did this, he said quietly. All of this started because you gave some cubs your slippers. It was Bora's slippers too, Yuna said. And yours, and everyone else who shared what they had. That is the point, is it not? Sharing. That is what humans do best. We share our food, our stories, our slippers. We share our joy. Yuna nodded. She thought about her career. She had done many things she was proud of. She had negotiated treaties. She had saved lives. She had helped build bridges between species that had been divided for generations. But her proudest moment would always be that night on the Starlight Harmony when she gave a shivering cub a pair of blue slippers and watched her slide across the floor for the first time. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment humanity found its true purpose in the galaxy. Not as warriors, not as conquerors, not as the species from the death world that everyone feared, but as the species that taught the galaxy to play, the species that made soft slippers for cold feet, the species that built smooth floors without knowing they were building playgrounds, the species that looked at the vast, cold, terrifying universe and said, "Would you like to go sliding?" As Yuna left the grand hall that night, a small Valori cub tugged at her sleeve. The cub had cream-colored fur and enormous eyes, just like Miri had all those years ago. "Are you Admiral Yuna?" the cub asked shyly. "The one from the stories?" "I am," Yuna said, kneeling down to meet the cub's eyes. "Is it true that you invented sliding?" Yuna smiled. "I did not invent it. I just showed some cubs that it was possible. They did the rest." The cub thought about this for a moment. Then she held out her 4 hands. In each hand was a small gift, wrapped in bright paper. "These are for you," the cub said. "From all the cubs in the galaxy, thank you for teaching us to slide." Yuna unwrapped the gifts. Inside each package was a slipper. One was gold, one was red, one was blue, and one was white. They represented all the species who had learned to slide together. She put them on, 2 on her feet and 2 in her hands. "Would you like to slide with me?" she asked the cub. The cub's face lit up brighter than any star. "Yes, please," she whispered, and together they slid into the future.